This video is going to show some of the data validation commands that we can use to ensure that the drill hole data we've imported is free from all errors. So on our flow chart here, we're going to be specifically looking at the drill hole reports and the parameter compliance command. So back in the drawing, we can see that I have my 5 drill holes that have been imported. So it's going to be very easy for us to manually check our drill holes just to ensure that everything's looking okay. Now, before I do any of the data validation commands, one thing that I always do is I just inspect one of the drill holes at random just to see if anything sticks out to me as being incorrect. And an easy way to do that is just to double click on one of these drill hole symbols. Now, one note when you do that, it's going to be important to double click somewhere around the edge of the symbol. We don't want to double click on the middle because we may accidentally activate the grip and actually move the drill hole. But to activate the data check, we're just going to double click on the drill hole symbol, and we can see a preview of what is in the drill hole. So we can see the strata names, the depths, the thicknesses, all sorts of things like that. So on initial check, I just make sure, are my thicknesses reasonable numbers? Do I have things spelled correctly, or do my thicknesses look like my elevations? Things like that. I can also spot check some of the qualities. So if I double click on one of the strata layers that has a quality check mark next to it, just double click. This brings up another dialog that'll show me the qualities for that specific layer. I can also bounce through the different strata layers over here on the left. So looking at this drill hole, I don't immediately see any problems. If I did see a problem, like the thicknesses and the elevations were switched, I would just want to go back, re-import the drill holes, and change my settings appropriately. But seeing as how that's okay, we might also want to do some more systematic checks for problems that could occur. So there's some really good commands for this on the drill hole pull-down menu. And under reports and parameter compliance, we've got good commands here to help us identify problems. I'm going to start off doing the reports, and one of the first ones that I'll often run is the strata order and count report. So this just helps me identify how many times do I have a C1 strata in my drill holes. So as for an example here, I'm going to start this command. It tells me to select all the drill holes, channel samples, and strata polylines. Right now we're just working with drill hole data. So I'm going to do a window around all my drill holes. And notice I've still got my contours turned on. It's okay if I try to select the contours because the program knows to only look for drill holes. So even though I did a window on the contours, they don't actually get selected. So 5 of those were found. I'm going to press enter to complete the selection. And I get a very simple report here. And one of the reasons I use this command so often for a new project is because it's very easy to see if I had a strata name misspelled, for example. As we can see here, I have a strata called OVB that occurs 4 times, and I've got another strata just called OB. So that tells me I probably just had a misspelling here. I've left out the V in there. So that's something that I'd want to go back through either my Excel sheet and I could just search through the problem there, or I could directly correct it in the program. My personal preference is always to correct the source data, so correct the Excel sheet, because if I do have to re-import the drill data later on for some other reason, I don't want to have to manually make the corrections again and again and again. I want to fix the source, re-import, and not have to think about it again. So for this one in particular, I just had introduced some mistakes into the drill hole data just so we could identify it. I know that that problem occurred in this drill hole. Now, once we get to another command here, I'll show how we could actually find those problems. But if you've got an idea of where it is and you just want to change it in the program itself, you can edit the drill hole by double clicking on it, get to this dialog, make the correction, and save your changes. So with that one correction made, if I go back to Reports, Strata Order and Count Report, pick all the drill holes, press Enter. Now I can see that I don't have that OB layer, I just have 5 counts of OVB. The next report that I'm going to show is the Invalid Strata report. What this report attempts to do is show me where I've got strata layers that are out of order or not conforming with other drill holes. I'm going to go ahead and start this command. Pick my drill holes once again, press Enter, and right there it tells me I have an out of order strata, overburden in C1, and it's occurring in these 2 drill holes here. So C3 and C4, and it lists the XY coordinates. So it's telling me right away I've got some strata layers that are just not where they should be. And then it also gives me a text report just telling essentially the same thing. So I can see right there C3 and C4, something is not looking right. So what I can do is I can go find one of those drill holes and find what the problem is. Now, it does point to a drill hole that's going to have some problems in it, but if I want to find the other drill hole, so that's going to be C3 or C4, if that's not the one that I want, another way to find a drill hole is with drill hole pull down, drill hole utilities, find drill hole. And I can just type in the name. I'll say C4. And now it's pointing to that drill hole. So I could take a look at C4. Double click inside it. And right now I don't see any problems with the ordering of my strata. Overburden, C1, interburden, those look to be in the right order. So I'm going to repeat that command. This time I'll look for C3. And this is the one that was pointed to originally. And let's see what we have going on here. So I can see here that my interburden and my overburden are actually flipped. This is another problem that I manually introduced, but if we did run into this, it was a problem in the Excel sheet, I'd probably want to go back to the Excel sheet and change it. For right now though, I'm just going to make the correction, basically undo the error that I introduced. Make the change there, save it, now we're good to go. Now if I go back to drill hole pull down reports, invalid strata report, and a quick little side note, another way to get back to a recently used command, instead of going through the pull down menus, I can actually just do a right click and I can go to recent input, and if I know the name of the command, I can see what's listed in here. So that bad CH, so bad core hole, that's the invalid strata report. Just another way that I can repeat a previously used command. Okay, so now this report comes up empty. I don't have any strata that are out of order, and now I'm good to go. So that's just another very, very useful report. The next report that I'm going to do is the attribute validation report. Now in order to use this report, there's another command that I'm going to have to use as well. But what this seeks to do is it's going to check through all of my drill hole attributes to make sure they're within a reasonable range. So before I can do this, I'm actually going to go back to drill hole pull down, define attributes. This brings up an empty table, and my goal right now is going to be to populate this table with the attributes in the drill holes and then enter in my expected range of values. Now a quick way to populate this table is just to click read drill holes, pick all the holes, press enter, and that just reads in the strata attributes exactly as they show up. The only thing I usually change on here is the minimum and maximum values. So the minimum defaults to 0, the maximum is going to default to 100,000, but it's very useful if I change these values to more reasonable numbers. So for my ash value, I'm not expecting anything above a 15% ash, so I'm going to set that to the expected maximum value. My BTUs, I'm not expecting anything less than, let's say, 8,000, and I'm not expecting anything above, let's say, 14,000. As for my sulfur, these are going to be pretty low numbers. I'm not expecting anything above, let's say, a 3%. So these are just expected ranges of values. If anything's outside that range, it's going to show up in the attribute validation report. Now, just to make sure I keep these settings saved, I'm going to click Save As, store this in my settings subfolder, and I'll call this my attribute definitions. Save it. I'm going to exit. And now I can go to Reports, Attribute Validation Report. I'm going to pick all the drill holes. Another little side note, if I don't want to window the drill holes, let's say I had a lot of them on the screen, anytime I'm prompted to select objects, I can just type in the word all, ALL, press enter, and it scans the entire drawing and selects anything that it possibly can. Now I can continue selecting things, or I could continue deselecting things. But when I've got everything that I need, I'm going to press enter a second time. And I get a prompt in the command line asking if I want to place all strata attributes on one line in the report. I'm going to say no to that. Report strata depth to, I'll just report it to the bottoms of the strata. Report strata elevations, I'll also report those to the bottom. And I get a report here, and it's just showing one problem in my drill holes. So I can see inside of drill hole C4, tells me all the values that I have, and it's going to tell me that the attributes that are creating the problem, it's this sulfur value. So that's showing up at 11%. This is another problem that I manually introduced. I know that's supposed to be a 1.1, just to demonstrate the problem there. But that's telling me I've got something I'm going to need to fix. So I could close out of here and go correct the problem. Now, another thing regarding these reports is I've got a lot of options up here. If I wanted to actually save this report, maybe keep track of all the changes I'm going to make to this project, I could just save it here, and this will save out a very simple text file. Some other nice things I can do, I won't go through those right now, but I'm just going to X out of that report, and I need to find drill hole C4, and you'll recall we showed that just a moment ago. Quick way to do that is I can go to drill hole, pull down, drill hole utilities, find drill hole. And say let's go with drill hole C4. It points to it. I can double click on it, and I could double click on the strata layers, and there is my sulfur that's just way too high. So again, that's just a typo that was made. I know that's supposed to be a 1.1. Now, for most applications, I'd want to change it in the Excel sheet. For now, I'm just changing it in the program itself. So now that I've made some changes to the drill holes, something else I might want to do, let's say I wasn't making changes in the Excel sheet, I was just making changes in the report. It's going to be very useful to be able to re-export this data out to an Excel sheet. So I could have the original unedited data, or I could have the new updated fixed data. Two commands will do that. One command is under drill hole, import export drill holes, drill hole export, but this is very, very similar to just going down to the reports and doing a custom drill hole report. So I can click there, pick my 5 drill holes, I get a few prompts asking about how I want to process this data. Most of the time when I use this drill hole report, I just say report the strata data, and I leave the rest of these unchecked. I'm going to click OK here. And this brings me to the report formatter. So there's a lot of things we use the report formatter for. I'm not going to get into all the details of using the report formatter right now. I'll mention more of that later on when we talk about reserve estimation. So just as a very quick and dirty run through on the report formatter, I'm just going to take absolutely everything out of the available column, add it to the used column, and I want to export this information out to Microsoft Excel. So I can go to the MS Excel tab, I can click Export to Excel, and that will create a new Excel workbook with all the information about my drill holes. So any changes that I've made to the holes, they'll be present in here. So if I did have to re-import data, I could just re-import from this spreadsheet instead of my original unedited sheet. So it's just another very useful report that I can use for tracking or keeping up with how my data has changed. Another very useful command that I like to use is parameter compliance. So some of these reports, they might identify a problem, but they may not show you exactly where the problems are, or if there's multiple problems in multiple holes, it might be hard to keep track of where all those issues were. So parameter compliance can be used to actually show where the problems are, just to visually identify where those things are taking place. Or we could also make some changes to the drill holes systematically. Now, under parameter compliance, we can start off just by defining parameters that we want to check, but more often than not, I end up just using this mark compliance drill holes, because that's actually going to show me where the problem exists. Or maybe not necessarily a problem, it just shows me where a drill hole passing a test exists. Let's just jump into this and we'll see how this works. So mark compliance drill holes. And I have a totally blank dialog. I don't have any values punched in here. But the idea of this command is to build a logical test to identify drill holes of interest. The first parameter that I'm going to check, I'm going to set it by hitting the Set button. And these are predefined attributes that I can search for. For example, if I was looking for a drill hole with a strata above, below, equal to a certain thickness, I could hit Set. Or if I'm looking for drill holes that contain a specific strata, I could do that. As a simple example, I'm going to check for all the drill holes with an overburden thickness above 40 feet. So I'll click Set. The operator, I'm going to say I'm looking for thickness greater than value of 40. And we are checking individual strata layers, so I'm going to check through my overburden strata layer. I could save this, but just this is going to be a temporary example. I'm not going to worry about it right now. We're going to click OK. I get a prompt down in the command line asking if I want to process beds. Now, my overburden only has a strata name. So for this case, I'm not interested in the beds. It's asking if I want to analyze the entire drill hole or a specific strata. I'll let it go ahead and check the entire drill hole for passing this. So I'll click drill hole. It asks for the drill holes to process. I'm going to pick all of them. And now it says, do I want to change, create a selection set, draw a circle around these holes? So I could actually put any of the drill holes that pass this test. I could put them on a different layer. I could change the symbol. I could change the drill hole type. I could actually select them. But I'm a big fan of using the circle option. So just draw a circle around those drill holes. And now it's asking for the layer name I want to draw the circles on. I'll stick with the default of core mark. Mark size of 100, that's fine. And so I can see there are 3 drill holes that pass that test. So these 2 drill holes I expect to have an overburden less than 40 feet. And sure enough, the thickness there is only 19. And the thickness here is 59. So this parameter compliance, mark compliance drill holes command can be very, very useful for identifying problems or maybe just areas of interest. It's a very, very useful command, and in addition to just checking one attribute, you can check multiple attributes. So I might be looking for a coal thickness greater than 5 feet, but with a BTU value less than 11,000. I can build up as many of those tests as I like to basically identify trends, problems, anything like that in the data. So just a very, very useful command. So I'll mention just once again, this is not an all-inclusive video. There may be other reports in here that are very useful for you. So I'll encourage you just to check these out, see what looks interesting to you. And if you want to know more on these, you can check them out in the help manual. Got full descriptions on all those reports, how to use them, things like that.